Hello, Guitar Smarts fans. Before you check out this podcast, I want to make you aware of a cool new place where you can interact with other Guitar Smarts listeners. It's a Facebook group called the Guitar Geek Hangout. That's where we hang out and talk about all things guitar. So, if you like the Guitar Smarts podcast, come and chat with Kiran and myself over in the Guitar Geek Hangout on Facebook. Maybe check out some pre-podcast clips and even get involved in asking and answering lots of questions from the other page dwellers. Hope to see you there.
This is probably tips for general life, isn't it? Really, or any relationship. I wonder how many of these things you could translate and I could use later on with my wife and see if it gives me a
point, isn't it? Yeah. Band is life.
She might be overhearing all of this conversation going, it's not just in the band that you should be applying these things.
Yeah, exactly. Greetings, welcome to another episode of Guitar Smarts. Thanks for downloading. Recently we spoke about getting ourselves prepared for gigging on a technical level with our Boy Scouts Guide to Gigging, and that was all about maintaining our instruments, getting our equipment ready for the rigours of gigging and rehearsing. But what do we need to consider when it comes to being a member of a band and ensuring that we are pulling in the right direction? How do we be a good band member? What do we need to do on a personal level to help ensure success as a band? And that's what we're talking about this week. It's the Beginner's Guide to Gigging. Come and join us on our social media pages too. You can find us on facebook.com/Guitar Smarts and also on Instagram at guitar_smarts. And also please remember to leave a review and a rating for our podcast using the links that are in the description. Now, Kiran and I have done 30 episodes of Guitar Smarts, and it's something that we do on the side of our day jobs and our busy daily lives that have nothing to do with music and guitars. We have different careers altogether, and it's coming into a busy summer for us, looking after families and taking some breaks. So this is going to be the last podcast for a couple of weeks, and then we'll be back again with episode 31 in just a few weeks' time. Anyway, that's enough waffle from me. Let's get to it. Hey Kieran, how are you doing? You well?
I'm really good, mate. Yeah, I'm looking forward to our chat today. I've got a nice cup of coffee on the go. I've got a fun weekend ahead planned with some friends' weddings coming up, and got a gig. I'm supposed to be gigging tonight, actually. There's a big music festival that my band's playing at. But I've got this wedding tonight, so I'm not going to be there for tonight's gig, which is a shame because it's going to be a big one. But gigging again back with the band tomorrow night. So yeah, I've got a fun weekend lined up, mate.
How about you? You need a depth for the wedding, don't you?
That's what they said. That's what they said. They said, well, can't you just get a dep? And I was just like, well, you're going to need to, yeah. And they're like, no, for the wedding. And I was like, well, I'm best man. So I think I don't think you can dep someone in as best man, can you? But, yeah.
You can try.
You can try.
Are they questioning your commitment to the band because you're not finding your best man? Sorry, I can't be a best man. I've got a gig.
Exactly. Well, there was all kinds of talk about because it's a festival slot, right? So it's not like a full gig. It's just an hour's slot opening up the festival. So they're like, don't worry about it. We're on at 4. We'll be done by kind of 6 after de-rigging and everything. And, we'll drive you up to where you've got to get to for the wedding. And I told them, they're like, yeah, we'll drive you up there, put you on the back of one of the motorbikes and we'll get you there really quickly. And I was like, oh, could this work? And no, it couldn't work.
Sounds risky. Yeah.
It sounds good, doesn't it?
I'm glad you're not taking unnecessary risks.
No, although I am slightly gutted because the festival does look awesome, but hey ho, there's always more gigs.
Cool, man.
How about you, buddy? What are you up to? What are you up to in the next few days?
Well, just chilling out, really, spending time with family. I'm up north this week. Just kind of having a bit of time up here just to see family and for my son to see his grandparents. So just going to carry on doing that this weekend and then head back home down south on Sunday and back into the usual grind. But I haven't played guitar all week, except for my original first guitar, which is still hanging behind me in this room, which is completely out of tune. And you could drive a bus between the frets and the strings. But it's still here. That's the only guitar that's available to me, and I haven't really played it. So I'm looking forward to, when I do get back, I'm looking forward to playing a bit of guitar, doing a bit of practice.
Yeah, you sent me a picture of yourself with that guitar when you were a teenager.
Yeah.
And I just said, seeing it there, it got me quite emotional. I was like, that's your first guitar. Are you now you've got your new guitar maintenance skills under your belt. You're not tempted to put a new set of strings on it this week and see what you can do?
Not in the slightest. Still got the original strings on it. The strings are nearly 30 years old. Yeah. Well, I only really used it for about 6 months, and then I moved on to an electric, relatively quickly. I still played it a bit, but yeah.
It sounds like there's no love lost there between you and that guitar.
I have a great fondness for it, but as its functionality as an instrument, objectively speaking, is it's non-existent.
Relegated to wall art.
That's it. Yeah, and only just art. Just stretching the word art a little bit there. But yeah, that's me. That's me. Cool. Right, what are we talking about this week?
Well, I think this is a really good one because we are fortunate enough in the UK now to be on the other side of what they called Freedom Day. Freedom Day. Interesting nomenclature for that. Yeah, that's quite a divisive name for it, isn't it?
Yeah,
but 19th of July 21 was Freedom Day. Where now, apparently, we are able to go back to some relative new normality. So, gigs have started up again. Live music is starting to return. The arts are back, which is fantastic. And so we were chatting this week, weren't we? And we thought we had a couple of ideas for today's show. And then we thought, well, actually, it would be quite good to have a conversation about getting back out there and gigging. But rather than from the kind of gear perspective, from the perspective of what it means to be a team player in a band. So, that's different, right, to what we spoke about before in terms of the Boy Scouts guide.
Exactly that. They were always kind of technically led conversations, weren't they, about being prepared and being ready. We have had some discussions in the past, like you remember way back when, beginning of the year, when we had Andy Rudd on, who was a teammate in Roadrunner Blues, and a lot of that discussion was about running a band successfully. From his perspective as a band leader and what he'd learnt over the years. And this is kind of coming back to that conversation again, isn't it? About we've done everything we can now to be prepared ourselves, whether that's setting up our guitars, making sure everything's working correctly, having spares, and just generally being well prepared. The Boy Scouts Guide to Gigging, and this is more the personal level now. This is how to be a good bandmate, how to have good etiquette, and the things you should remember. If you want success for your band, you all have to be pulling in the right direction. So what are those things you got to do? How do you be a good band member? What do you do on a personal level? What are the do's and don'ts is, kind of my thoughts here. And this could be quite a complex one, really, couldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it can be complex because what you're talking about, Matt, is dealing with other people to make something happen, right? Which, on the face of it, should be relatively easy because you're musicians, you like the music, you're there to work together. But most bands fall apart or have disagreements because of interpersonal relationship kind of stuff between the band, right? And people not seeing eye to eye, or people inadvertently upsetting each other, or just some people not being that team fit. So this is actually, this could get into quite a deep level of stuff, but I think we'll try and keep it relatively light and just kind of talk about some of the common sense things to do. And I must admit, we've been gigging for years, decades. Mm-hmm. But even coming out of lockdown and getting back into rehearsals with the band and then getting the first few gigs under the belt, the stuff that I was kind of like, oh yeah, I needed to remind myself about, just to kind of remind, this is this is the important stuff, because, and I think you said this in a previous podcast, Matt, or if you didn't, you've definitely said this to me in conversations you and I have had, and it's about the fact that 50% of it, or maybe even less, is the musicality and the technical competence you bring on your instrument, and arguably an equal portion, if not slightly more, is who you bring as yourself to the band and how that makes other people feel to be in a band with you, which ultimately determines how successful you'll be in the band and how successful the band will be. So there's a lot that people can underestimate the importance, I think, of getting a few simple etiquette, common sense, team kind of things right to make the band successful. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's almost like you have to. I think sometimes people aren't willing to accept that there has to be some compromise between what they want in their mind, the experience of being in a band to be, and what it's effectively really going to be like. Because not everyone in the band is going to have the same vision as you as to what they want out of being in a band, but they want to find the most of it somehow. So you've got to give something into the band experience as well to help others pull in the same direction, as well as kind of learn to compromise and also, try and find the things that you want. That's been my experience. Although I was going to say, I'm trying to find a band to be in as well, and kind of, have had a jam with some people recently, and it went pretty well. And I've been struggling in my mind to come to terms with a few things around like song selection, because the other guys are very much, kind of seem to be agreeing on more things, and I'm kind of like, I'm not certain I like that set list, but again, it's a compromise thing, right? So I keep thinking, well, I need to share in their enthusiasm as well, and you have to learn to compromise and find enjoyment in those things too. But I think also I've been spoiled by the last for the last 5 or 6 years for me, I haven't been gigging in a band that I've been like a member of. When we were in Roadrunner together, obviously we rehearsed regularly and we made choices as a band and we did things that we wanted to do. But since we kind of quit as a band, the only gigs I've really done is where I've been the depths for wedding bands. I mean, they were fairly regular gigs, but I had no say in the band. It was, hey, are you available for a gig? This is when it is. This is the set. And you turn up and you do the gig. And there's no, as easy as that is, as good as a band as they were, and whoever I'm turning up with, there's no kind of band ethos there. There's no kind of togetherness, and you don't really. I miss that, and I forget that takes work and effort to build, and you can't expect to just walk into a rehearsal room and just kind of get on with it as if it's going to work out the way you want it to work out. You have to put some effort in. That's kind of how I feel at the moment. And what do you think, what are the most important things you've learned over years of gigging, Kiran? What do you think are the things that matter the most to you, not just the music wise, but from when, what's your experiences of when things have worked out and when things haven't worked out? Has there been a common thread between those two things?
Yeah, I think one of the first lessons that you need to learn or to be successful, be it in a regularly gigging band that you want to be part of, or even doing depth stuff, is to check your ego and leave it at home if it's there, right? Yeah. Because it's a rife environment for people to want to showboat, to showcase their own kind of preferences, skills, talent, and that's not what it's about. This is about putting on a great performance for an audience, and as a band feeling that you have all contributed and worked together. And in my experience, the times where that doesn't happen is where there is one person with either an ego or a communication style or just like a very fixed view on things that isn't willing to compromise. And I think you mentioned that kind of previously, and that's the difference, right? Is there are going to have to be plenty of moments of compromise, be it on the arrangement of a song, be it on the set list, be it on who takes a solo, whatever. The kind of list is endless. And I think one of the mistakes that we can often make, turning up for a rehearsal, turning up for a gig, turning up for a depth thing, is you have in your mind how you've rehearsed it, how you've played it at home, and you need to be prepared to get into that situation and be flexible and not be driven by either your own ego or your own kind of fixed view on how things should be done, because that's where immediately sources of friction can happen. And I think that was one of the first things that I was reminded of when I started getting back into gigging recently was, I'd learnt the songs in the key that I was told that they were going to be, and I went, and learnt the arrangements as they should be. And then you quickly get into the band environment, and then you realise, oh no, we do it slightly differently. We do it like this, or I know it's in that key, but we actually do it in this key here. And you have to just be able to roll with that and go, yeah, okay, cool, got it. Not, well, I've learned it in this key, or well, I've always gigged it with every band I've been in like this, so we should do it like this. It's kind of like, just roll with it a bit.
Flexibility, being flexible, being willing to make changes, contributing, aren't you? That's the thing. Again, you're not looking to fit, you're not looking to fit perfectly in place somewhere without making a change. You're looking to find something that you're contributing towards positively, because that's where the best experience is when you all, those gigs where you all look at each other at some point in the night and you just know everyone's enjoying it as much as you are, because you've worked at it, you're doing it, you're enjoying it, you liked it when you rehearsed it, people are dancing. That's the best thing. That doesn't happen without that kind of compromise and that ability to understand you're contributing to something greater than just what your own desire is. And I've always found that's always that's something that you crave more eventually anyway, as time goes on when you're in a good band, is that kind of collective experience of enjoyment rather than your own. Because it's no fun going to a gig and thinking, this is brilliant, I'm doing everything I wanted to do, but nobody else in the band is enjoying it. And that's no fun at all. And people can see that. People can you can spot a band a mile off where you can tell one person's the boss and they're doing things their way and they enjoy it and nobody else likes it.
Absolutely.
That's no fun.
I'll give you an example. There's joining this band that I've just joined, they previously just were going out as a 4-piece, right? So one guitarist. And that one guitarist is kind of a pro musician. So he has another originals band and things. And he was kind of saying to this band, there'll be other gigs coming up with my originals band, and I need to have that flexibility. So they were like, okay, cool. Well, we'll get in another guitarist. That guitarist will become the main lead guitarist for the band, but we'd like to make it actually a 5-piece to create that sound that we want. And then if there's gigs that you can't make as that guitarist, then we've still got another guitarist. So that was the arrangement for this band. This kind of current guitarist, very happy with that. He's got no ego. He's an amazing player. So I joined the band and, had a conversation with him to say, okay, well, look, here's the set list. How do we want to work through the guitar parts and, work out who takes certain lead lines, who does which bits. And, the guy's got no ego at all. He's like so chilled, so lovely. And he's just like, well, you're going to be the main guitarist now, and you need to be able to carry this set list by yourself on gigs that I'm not going to be there. And I said, yeah, absolutely, fine, got that, no problem at all. But let's think about the gigs where you will be there, because that's going to be still the majority. That's still going to be 80% of the gigs you're going to be on. So he said, well, I'll just do the kind of rhythm bits and you can take all the lead stuff. And I kind of left it that, and I was like, okay, fine. And I kind of thought about it. And then over a few weeks, I managed to convince him that, no, we need to do this together. He's a phenomenal player. He's a monstrous guitar player. It's just like, he's not going to be content. As much as chilled as he was with it, or just chomping along with chords all night and watching me play solos. That's, and I'm not going to enjoy that either, because I like to feed off other musicians, and I like to see them having fun and them enjoying themselves. So we've now reached that point where we've gone through all of the set list, and he's now gratefully and accepted that he's going to take lead on these songs. I'm going to do these parts, and we've made it equitable, and we've made it kind of fun and engaging, because I don't want him to get bored as a player on these gigs, and I don't want to have to be doing all of the work on it either. So, and from the gigs that we've had now, that was such a great conversation to have had with him, because now we're playing off each other and enjoying playing with each other as instrumentalists, rather than just, doing the gig.
Yeah, rather than just having like this segregated role, like, right. I'll stick to doing my thing over here, you do your thing over there. Which is all very kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Democratic, maybe? Kind of splitting of the roles or whatever it is, and just saying, let's just take care of our individual parts. But isn't it so much more fun when you can interact with each other and improvise or not improvise, it just work on things together and build up something that's greater than just the sum of the parts. Right. That's what I enjoyed the most about being in a band with you, is that I had the pleasure of both playing music I enjoyed and listening to other people, like you and Ed or Ken and Tel and Andy, and just being in a band with people who I enjoyed listening to. And actually, we said on social media this week, we were asking people what's their experience of being a good band member, being a good bandmate, and Ollie Browning mentioned this exact thing, which is listen to the band. So thanks for that, Ollie. And I think that's probably the top of my list as well, really, if I was going to say to people, if somebody asked me, how do I be a good band member? That would be top of the thing, is to listen and listen to the rest of the band, and, try and contribute something together, try and contribute to something rather than just think about your own part. And you've made an interesting point about your colleague there, because it's almost like he's saying, you have the fun part, I'll back you up, kind of thing. And it's almost quite a gracious thing for him to do, to maybe accept that, there's some things maybe he thinks you can do better than him, or maybe there's a confidence issue there. But what you've actually done together is gone, hey, the both of us here, I want to enjoy listening to you, you want to enjoy listening to me. Our contribution together is going to be better than if we both just stick to our own segregated thing. I think that's a really key point there. You have to use your ears more in a band than, just stand there and play your own little part.
Well, I learned that from you, mate. I learned that from you. If prior to gigging in bands with you, if somebody had said to me, yeah, join the band and you can be lead guitarist and do all of the solos, and I'm totally fine with that. And I would have been like, I wouldn't have been a complete dick with it. But I would have been, are you sure? And they'd be like, yeah, I'm sure. And I've been, okay, well, fine. And I would have done that, because, obviously, who wants to do that? But as I said, it was like you said, it was gigging for years with you, where you go, that's not where the fun is. The fun element and the unpredictable element and the kind of changing it up at each gig to enable the two of you to just communicate, be constantly communicating with each other, either visually or like, mouthing words to each other to no, you take this one, no, you do this one. And then it just becomes more fun. So there was no way I wanted to not try that approach with this band, even though they were quite set on having defined roles and defined, predictability with it. I was like, nah, let's play with it. We can.
You can, and it builds up and up over time. It's almost like you start having in-jokes, musical in-jokes almost, where you kind of, you always play this particular lick or something at a certain. We did this in Road, and there'd always be some stupid little thing that you'd play, and you'd look over and go, I've just played that.
The lick that I stole off you because I loved it so much, and then just played it every single gig just because I loved it so much. Yeah.
You don't get those things happen unless you get into that mindset of being a listener first and foremost.
Yeah.
You know, so a super key thing is being a good listener. And you said communication as well. Listening is communicating as much as playing is, because you know communication isn't a communication without a listener at the other end. So you've got to be a good listener, not just musically, but you know, in just general communications with a band. Which actually leads me on to the next thing that I've got noted, which is rehearsals. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of bands get rehearsals wrong. You know, my experience of being in rehearsals is that a rehearsal shouldn't be a jam session. Mm-hmm. You know, a rehearsal should be something that's structured and organised. You know, maybe planned, and it doesn't have to be complex. You know, if you're in a band that has, say, 50 songs in a set, not in a set, sorry, but 50 songs available to it that you pick from when you're doing your gigs, you know, then you shouldn't just be turning up to a regularly planned rehearsal and just going, what shall we do? It's kind of, you should be structuring it and thinking, well, do you know what? We haven't done these 5 songs for a while. Let's cover them tonight. And actually, we've got an idea for this one. Let's learn that song and, you know, try and schedule things and get everybody on the same line, because you achieve so much more that way, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're
and also,
right.
it's people are spending time and money. You don't want to waste the rest of the band's time and money if you're not kind of, you know, working to kind of follow the same plans and the same schedules. Being practiced and ready for a rehearsal is key. It's not the same as being gig ready. Mm-hmm. You know, being rehearsed. Is not necessarily the same as being gig ready. You know, if you've rehearsed a song, you might want to kind of figure out your own starts and your own endings. Yeah, you know, a rehearsal isn't a place you come and learn a song. Rehearsal somewhere where you bring a song you've already learned and you make it work for the band, right? And then you practice it over and over. Get it? So it's muscle memory. I always try and tell myself that, you know, something should be muscle memory, because you can't have those moments in a live performance where you're enjoying things and you're looking around and you're having a laugh with your bandmates if you're purely concentrating on going, what's the next part again? It should be muscle memory, you know.
Yeah. And you see so many musicians gigging like that, where sometimes it's a confidence thing, sometimes it's a lack of their own awareness and how they look thing, which is why I know it sounds really, really self-indulgent. But if you haven't, play in front of a mirror, or in this day and age, record yourself on your phone, like as you play, or get someone to record you at a gig so you can see what you look like. Because I got that feedback very early on in my gigging, like when I was a teenager, and people were like, you're not connecting with the audience. And I was actually connecting with other band members, but I was completely neglecting the audience, and with no eye contact or not looking up. So little things like that, so that you're aware of what you're doing. But sometimes it's because people are so intently just trying to listen and focus on what they're doing, because it hasn't been rehearsed, as you say, to the point where they can then relax and look up, communicate with other band members, communicate with the audience, involve them, bring the audience in. And that's, I think you're right. I think rehearsal can help you get all of that stuff done, so that muscle memory kicks in, and then you can work on the art of performing rather than just the art of playing.
That's a really good point, that I think, and that plays back into your own enjoyment, doesn't it? Again, of the gig, you know, of the band you're playing in. If you get so much more interaction back from the crowd, you can be directly responsible for that. You don't always have to assume it's somebody else, or it's a bad gig, or it's you had an off night, or it's song selection. Just your kind of the way you present yourself at a gig. When I was studying at ACM, we did have some classes that were about things like stagecraft and, you know, performance skills and things. And so much of what you see, you know, any good band that you see that is a good people who are good performers, it's not always just that they just happen to have that skill. It's probably that those things that you enjoy about that performance are rehearsed. You know, things like, I'm trying to think of an example.
Yeah.
Just simple things like, when some guitarists standing next to each other moving their guitars in the same direction or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, almost like a dancing. Things like that aren't improvised. They just aren't. They're rehearsed. They're planned, The way people step forward to do a solo and the rest of the band members step back, or little things like that can really make something look slick.
Yeah.
They don't happen without you planning it.
Yeah.
And you might think it's cheesy and it's got nothing to do with the music or what you want to do as a guitarist. But it does, again, it plays feedback into your general enjoyment of being in the band. And people come up to you and say, you guys were great. Great
I
show.
love the way you did that. Or
Yeah.
There was something that happened at the last gig, actually, that was improvised. But it worked so brilliantly that I made a mental note to say, we need to do that at every gig, because it will become a thing. It will become a thing, not just for us, but for the audience, where it will just kickstart that song and get everybody really into it. And it happened by accident, and it happened off the cuff, but it just worked so beautifully. And so when you stumble across those things as well, try and capture them, because you can just build it all into the performance that you do together rather than as individuals, and work on that kind of stagecraft. Yeah, it's good.
They can become kind of things that identify you as a band, in some ways. And people say, oh, you should go and watch this band. Last time we saw them, we just stumbled down the pub and they were playing. We thought, oh, some live music's on, but they did these songs and they did this thing. It was great. They were so good. And people talk about you because you've done something different. And then you eventually find that, the reasons you like going to gig and going to play in a band are different than the things you had in mind at the start of trying to be in a band, and really key. What about things like general band etiquette, gig and band etiquette?
So, for sure, right? I mean, this is probably tips for general life, isn't it? Really, or any relationship. I wonder how many of these things you could translate and I could use later on with my wife and see if it gives me a
point, isn't it? Yeah. Band is life.
She might be overhearing all of this conversation going, it's not just in the band that you should be applying these things.
Yeah, exactly.
General etiquette. Yeah. Well, there's no dishwasher when I go to a gig, so we can't talk about stacking the dishwasher properly, which is something I clearly never do. But general etiquette. Right. So let's think about it from the start. So obviously you've mentioned rehearsals. So I think general etiquette is, before you even get to the gig, you're probably going to be rehearsing. So, there is that onus and responsibility to have learnt your pieces to the best of your ability. Don't worry if you're kind of stressing or you haven't quite got something right or you're struggling with a piece. The rest of the band can help you with it, or you can find a way around it. But, put in the effort. Don't rock up, and come across as lazy that you've just showed up to a rehearsal that's going to cost you 40 quid, $50 or whatever for the rehearsal space, and you're just wasting people's time, because that's not cool.
Of course.
The next one for rehearsals and for gigs is probably quite a controversial one, because I don't think I've ever met a musician, myself included, that has strictly followed this, but it's about punctuality, which is like, musicians and punctuality is just like an oxymoron, isn't it, really? But there's nothing worse than rushing to set up and sound check for a gig because, you've turned up way later, or, somebody, or what's worse, right, in a team dynamic is 2 of the other members, 3 of the other members have all got there when they were supposed to. They've unloaded the van, they've set everything up, and you literally rock up and plug in your amp and guitar and go, right, I'm gig ready. And they're kind of like, yeah, well, thanks for the help with that. Yeah. Or, and I think some of that is around punctuality and timekeeping and stuff, but that's I don't know how you fix that with some musicians.
Yeah. So actually, this is again one of the things I've disliked about being or at least some gigs over the past years where I've done wedding gigs, or I've done sound. I've done sound for wedding bands as well. I remember doing one gig where the load-in was horrendous for the sound, and most of the band turned up late. And the singer turned up after we were meant to do a sound check. So she just kind of rocked up late, didn't care or anything like that, didn't introduce herself to me or and just wanted to start the gig. And at the start of the gig, she was just kind of shouting to me over the stage that her monitor mix was awful, couldn't hear herself properly, and that it was starting to feed back as she was trying to adjust it herself on her iPhone, because the desk I was using, people could set up their own monitor mixes and stuff. And I just kind of thought, well, if it's feeding back, I'll turn it down. You've missed sound check. You didn't arrive in time to get the sound you wanted and to get the time with the sound engineer to adjust things how you want it. This is your problem now. That was in my mind. I was thinking, I'm not going to, go to great lengths here to solve your problem. The sound, now my concern is the front of house, because that's the crowd. And the musicians that turned up here on time are actually all really happy with how things sound. You didn't turn up until barely just before the gig, and apparently no reason for it. And I just thought it's just so unprofessional. That's a hard, turning up on time, I think, is such an important thing, especially if you're in a band where you're doing things by yourself, right? You don't have a sound engineer, and it's not that big a gig. If you're bringing your own PA and you're doing a pub or a bar or something, turn up together as a band and all kind of chip into the work you've got to do. I think that is just such an important thing.
And do you know what things will happen? And as you were talking there, it kind of made me think of another point in regard to this. It's like sometimes life will get in the way.
Yeah.
Right. And with best laid plans, traffic, something happens with the kids that makes you late, or you just didn't leave yourself enough time, right? We all mess up from time to time and turn up later than we intended to. But in that example that you gave, like, the right behaviour would have been, guys, I'm really sorry. I'm late. I meant to get here earlier. Sorry for kind of keeping you guys waiting. Sorry for holding things up. Mm-hmm. And, you show up, you apologise, and you muck straight in, right? Mm-hmm. What have I got time to do? Is there time for sound check? Okay, no worries. Well, let's just communicate with each other on the fly, as the gig starts, and sorry that I didn't get here for sound check or whatever. You come with the right attitude, and you're humble with it, and you come to make amends. I've turned up for gigs late where life has got in the way and it wasn't intentional, but the first thing I do is not go to the bar and get myself a drink and then go, oh, right, I've had my drink, I might as well start thinking about unpacking the car and setting up. It's like you come through the door loaded with as much as you can carry, and you start setting up straight away, and you get mucked in, and you catch yourself up, right? So that you're not holding the rest of the band up with sound check or what have you. And then people can realise, okay, this is somebody that's not doing it intentionally. This has happened, and it just creates a better sense rather than somebody. And I've seen people do this where they just rock up late, but then they're still not in a hurry to do anything.
Yeah. Absolutely. What is wrong with those people?
I don't know. It's like a lack of self-awareness completely, isn't it? Right?
Exactly.
It's just rude. It's just rude.
Exactly.
Right?
You never know. Yeah. You never know what's going to happen. I've had, I've had gigs before where I've turned up early and kind of got set up early. I think this is great. I'm just going to relax or whatever. And then you set up and you kind of go, oh, something's not working, or I've forgotten something, and you've got to run back to get something. Or sometimes things happen. Give yourself the time for the unexpected as well as the things you have to do. Mm-hmm. And also give yourself the time to set up, get sound checked, and then just sit down and chill out as a band, relax, shoot the breeze. You'd be surprised sometimes how little time you get when you're in a band to just sit down and chill out together. Mm-hmm. and just have a little bit of a socialise. How often did we do it when we were in a band together? How often did we actually, as a band, just go out and as a group of mates and chill out? It wasn't that often.
We had to make time. We had to make time for it, didn't we? And Andy was very good at this, as always. He ran a band brilliantly. He would run it so that there was money in the kitty available to fund a night out, and then he's uber god of efficient organisation, right? So he'd rally us all round, book a venue, five blokes when it wasn't even a gig, amazing organisation skills. But he recognised, and we all enjoyed that element of doing it. But if it wasn't a wedding gig, which can be a little bit too much downtime sometimes, where you're set up and then you've got to sit around for like 5 hours waiting. Otherwise, those gigs were just set up, sound check, play, and the team bonding happens in between. So good point though. Yeah, try to get there early, spend some time.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Cool. And we were just talking about etiquette there, and you mentioned about punctuality being a top thing there. One of the things that I'd thought about as well is volume. Mm-hmm. How? Because we're terrible as guitarists, right?
Yeah,
Not
we're always
just for being too loud, but we're always playing as well. We're always noodling around, aren't we? Are you like? I'm still like this. I still like this now. You kind of go to a rehearsal or you at a gig or whatever like that, and you're sound checking whatever, and you're just noodling around on the guitar. Stop doing that. Stop.
I'm a nightmare for it. As well. It's you got to watch that, and that again. I think is when you. But I think I remember you telling me about that before, like like when you play with pro musicians and stuff that are like proper seasoned professionals. It's like end of a song, volume knob straight down, bang, off. Done, silence, off. And it stays off until you're ready for the next gig. And if you need to tune up, you've got a tuner that bypasses and it's silent, and it's all of those little things. So but for years, like song finishes and tune up and have a little noodle, make sure your patch or your pedal is right for the next song, and all of those little things. It's just like the rest of the band. What are you doing? Yeah. You wouldn't see the drummer just sitting there, just kind of like
tuning his drums. Dum, 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 dum. It just wouldn't happen.
It wouldn't. Guitarists are a nightmare.
What is it? Why are we like that? Why is it?
I
don't know what it is.
It's probably not even conscious sometimes. It's like a fidget mechanism because you've got like a guitar strap around you and your hands are there, and it kind of feels weird just to keep them still on a guitar. But you've got to check yourself with that for sure. Try and make as little noise and disruption even during... Okay, so here's a really important point to be conscious of that exact topic. Is when everyone is, you're not ready, you're not necessarily at sound check stage yet, but you've all plugged in, you're all testing everything works for your individual instruments, and you're all trying to dial in your sound for the gig and everything. And then Mr. Guitarist in the corner there, he's been plugged in for like 10 minutes, and he's just going through every single patch and every possible volume connotation and every single thing. It's just like, no one else even has an interval to be able to check out their gear, because Mr. Guitarist is plugged in and that's it now. It's all about him getting his stuff right. And you've got to be very conscious not to be that guy. It's like, if you are plugged in first and you are ready to go, test your gear out, make sure it all works, get it as close as you can, but do it quickly, and then shut up so that other people can get themselves sorted.
Do those things in the context of the band and the sound, right? Do those because you're kind of always, you're doing yourself a disservice as well, right? Because you're getting your sound right. Really, what you should be doing is it's almost like a line check. Is everything working? Turn everything on. Yeah, everything's working. Nothing stops working when I turn things on. Are my levels more or less correct? So, in not in terms of the gig, in terms of with each other. So do I have a clean sound and mono drive sound? Is my lead sound coming up enough? The different levels you expect in relation to each other, get them right, and then when you know they're right, turn everything. Just put your guitar down and wait for sound check. And then when you sound check as a band, that's when you need to start thinking, am I loud enough in the context of the band? Is this sound right in the context of the band? Do I need to EQ my amp differently for this room that we're in? Do I need to knock a bit of bottom end off or whatever? Start thinking about things in the context of the music you're playing, not just... we're terrible for it as guitarists, right? Because, one of my things I like when I'm playing at home is I like having a nice big round kind of Strat sound, with loads of bottom end, especially when you're playing like clean stuff. But that stuff doesn't punch through in a band.
No.
Unless you're in like a trio, and you need a big guitar sound. But if you're kind of like, in a 7-piece band with, a keys player, a bass player, 2 guitarists, or whatever, you need to think about how your sound is in the mix. You can't do that unless you're in the mix. So I agree entirely. Get your stuff working, make sure it works, put it down, and then when you're doing a sound check as a band, think about it in the context of the band, not just of by itself.
And listen for the others as well, right? The drummer's not going to be able to get up front and go out and listen to sound check. The singer might be able to, but the bass player invariably never does. I don't know why, but it's often the lead singer and the guitarist that would come out front to check levels and things like that if you haven't got a proper sound engineer running your front of house. So obviously the natural inclination is to check if your guitar's cutting through the mix. And you're going to do that. You're always going to do that. And you're going to want to check if your lead patch is punching through for solos. But once you've satisfied your own kind of ideas around that, listen for where the other instruments are, because it doesn't matter how good you think your guitar sound is or how much it's cutting through. If the bass isn't there, or a bass needs EQing, or the vocalist has got too much top end, or whatever it is, like be that team player that helps the band sound check, and oftentimes listening for others and going to them, your bass sounds brilliant, but actually we could do with a little bit more from it just to kind of fill out the sound. Can you come up a bit, or whatever? People appreciate that because they realize then you're helping them to get the best sound possible for them as well as yourself. So
yeah, absolutely. My experience as a sound engineer in some situations is often that if you got to remember that people are there your audience are there to listen to the music, and the things that they listen to are the singer first and the band as a whole as one kind of complete sound. And more often than not, if somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, I can't really hear what you're singing," the singer probably doesn't need to be any louder. The rest of the band probably need to be quieter. Yes. You've come up too much. You've crept up too much. And simple things make a difference, right? If you're saying, "Well, I can't hear my amp," then think about where it is in relation to you. Because if you're stood in front of your amp and your amp's on the floor, all that sound is just coming past your feet and you're not really hearing it. You're hearing all the reflections in the room. So lean your amp back, stand it on a chair, do something so that you are in more of the direct line of its, path of travel from the speaker, and you can hear yourself a little bit better. Just remember about how it can affect the mix of everything, especially if you're in a band that, like we were for a long time, we didn't put everything through the PA. We relied on the PA for the vocals, and that was it. And then everything else was the acoustic nature of the band. And if we needed the guitar to be louder, it was the amp that turned up, not the PA. So you got to learn how to balance things, learn how you affect that overall mix. Sometimes you just have to accept, well, at this gig, I'm just not going to be able to hear myself brilliantly, but I'm going to trust that the audience can hear everything better, and that means for a better gig. Think about the greater picture.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good advice. Really good advice.
I wanted to talk about something which is probably a hard topic to talk about for some people in bands, but that's finances. Because there's always going to be, any band that you're in, over a long period of time, there's going to be some running expenses, right? Because if you're just starting out the band, initially the first thing you're going to have to pay for is rehearsal space. There's a shared cost immediately. And then maybe as you progress, you might want to invest in a PA system that the band has, or you might want to pay for a recording of a demo. So being in a band, you're going to have shared financial commitments as a band. How do you think, because again, this is something that Andy took care of for us when we were in a band together. And I thought he did it really well because he took ownership of it and he was transparent with it. And I think the way we did it is the ideal way, because we trusted somebody in the band who was trustworthy. That person was clear and transparent about the costs of running a band. And we made decisions as a band as to how kind of money was spent. Is there anything else, or have you had any experience in your time being in bands where that hasn't worked, or you've had issues with that?
I think not necessarily had issues with it, but it's easy to see how issues can arise. And I was reminded of this recently as well, is like different people have access to different levels of finances to get out and gig. right? And you may be fortunate enough to turn up to a gig with like 5K's worth of gear, you know, $5,000, pounds, whatever worth of gear, and that's great. And then, you know, but the guy next to you has got like a £200 rig, and he's making it work as best as he can. You know, be conscious about not criticizing people's sound or like pointing out the limitations of their gear, because it might be that's the best that they can afford, or that's all they've got, right? And so, you know, there's that element of it. I think there's etiquette around, like, so for example, for one of the gigs I went to recently, the lead singer picked me up because he had a van. He was just like, well, we live close enough, we're going down there, why don't we just go together? I'll dump your stuff in the van. And, you know, I felt obliged to offer him to get, you know, petrol money and stuff like that to help fill up the van and things like that. He wouldn't take it, you know, he's a very lovely guy, and he just like, no, don't be silly, I don't need that. But, you know, think about kind of things like that. So that, I guess it's about trying to find ways to make money not an issue, right? Because for some people, the money that you get at the end of the gig is an important part of their weekly income, right?
Yeah,
for some people, it's, you know, it's not. And so think about it in that way. Always kind of like stump up for stuff. I think the band kitty thing is a really great idea if people are comfortable and can afford it. And it's also being conscious of that, right? Like for some people, putting 20 quid into a band kitty, if you've only been paid like 60 pounds for a gig, and you need that 60 pounds to, you know, help pay for your bills for the next week, that can be a big ask. So, you know, I think I understand what you say now as I'm talking about it. I can understand why for some people it's a difficult topic and a difficult subject, isn't it? But you are right. There are points where that has got to be discussed, and people have to feel comfortable with it, because it costs money to keep a band running. Rehearsal space costs money. Gear, when it goes down, costs money. If you want to like improve your band and get better sound, you know, you want to get some better monitors, or you want to start miking things up and running it through the desk, and you want to get all of that stuff, you know, costs money and time. So you need to be, I think you need to be on the same page. Yeah, probably.
I think there's a trust issue as well, isn't there? I think if you trust is something that you kind of build up over time, and I think if you're in a position in a band where you've built up that trust, and there's no reason not to trust each other, I think that's a really good thing to instigate as a band kitty. I personally would be I'd be very concerned if I was being asked to contribute money into a band that I'd only just joined, people I don't really know too well, because the trust isn't there. I don't know, you know, how well that's going to work out. But I definitely think that's an important thing to do. And it actually goes back to, you know, you kind of contributing to that trust as a band, right? Be a trustworthy band member too. Be somebody who, you know, if you're going to commit to something, to having anything, songs learned, be somewhere on time, whatever it is, be trustworthy. And that's going to benefit you in the long run. It's going to benefit the band in the long run. It's going to benefit you. You're going to be known as a trustworthy person. You know, people are going to trust you and to, you know, continue to treat you, you know, respectfully over time. It's bizarre, isn't it? The more we discuss this today, the more I keep thinking being in a band is almost like being in a family. Rather than, you know, completely, isn't it? It's bizarre,
for sure,
especially the longer it goes on. So that's cool. I think we've covered that one pretty well. And I was just thinking as well, because when we said on social media, you know, to people, well, this is what we're talking about. What are your things? Basically, Rob Skinner's suggestion, it basically sums up everything that we've just discussed, right?
Words of wisdom from Rob. He's a wise man.
He is a very wise man.
And a very experienced gigging musician as well. So I'm sure he's encountered all of this stuff in his life.
So we've just talking about, you know, the things we've learned from years of experience, communication, being a good communicator, being open to suggestion, not leaving your ego at the door. We're talking about what to do in rehearsals, how to be well rehearsed, scheduling, planning things, and agendaizing things properly, if there's such a word, band etiquette, talking about volume and everything. But basically what we're saying was summed up by Rob Skinner in 4 words.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Don't be a dick.
There it is.
It's amazing advice. Isn't it? But that really is the crux of it. You know, you got to give credit to Rob there, because obviously that's a man with many years of experience as a performer and a singer and musician, and he's absolutely right, because isn't that also the crux of the problems that you have in bands? Whenever I've been in bands that have been problematic, it's because somebody's forgetting that one sage bit of advice, right? To not be an idiot, to do something, you know, to be a decent person. I think if you choose to be a decent person and to do things with care and consideration for the people you're in a band with, you're always going to generate success for that band and for your own musical longevity.
Spot on, Matt. Absolutely brilliantly summarised up, and yeah. Good on you, Rob. Absolutely.
Good on you, Rob.
Words of advice to us all to live by. Don't be a dick.
Exactly. Be a decent person.
Yeah, for sure.
Doesn't take much, does it?
Brilliant. We need to get that on a Guitar Smarts t-shirt, don't we? And send it to Rob.
That's a great idea. That is a brilliant idea.
Yeah, definitely some Guitar Smarts merch we've been talking about. So I think I sense our first mug or t-shirt coming up.
That might be the one.
Thinking of joining a band? ? And then just on the back,
that's it.
Don't be a dick.
There you go. I'll order 2, please. Fantastic. Well, anyway, mate, what have you? Well, actually, we talked about what you've got planned, didn't we, at the beginning for the next week? You got your wedding this weekend. What gigs have you got coming up in the future?
So tomorrow night is a pub gig. Which is cool. Actually, it's a lot of pub gigs at the moment, which is great. And I'm really enjoying this round of pub gigs, because this is a rock band that I'm out with, and it's reminded me, I haven't been in a proper rock band for a number of years, but I'm reminded of when I was last in one, which is the pubs that you go to play this and that book you are generally kind of rock pubs. You know, they're biker pubs or places that are known for good rock music. And I love the audiences that come to rock gigs. They're really they show up because they're really into the music, and they really love listening to that kind of music. And don't get me wrong, I've played many years happily with, you know, function pub bands where you're kind of playing the kind of standard dance along stuff, but generally people are there to drink and party, and the music is there as a nice incidental background thing for them to dance along to. Whereas these rock gigs, people come to watch the band, and I'm really humbled that people are doing that. So yeah, I mean, and then some festivals. It's festival season in the UK, so there's a few festivals coming up as well, beer festivals and things like that where we're playing. So yeah, that's pretty much what I'm up to. And then I'm looking forward to some time off as well, mate, with the family. August time, taking some time off with the kids. They're on school holidays and things, so just being able to spend some time with them properly. And if the sun ever decides to show its face in England again, maybe you know, taking them to the beach and stuff like that. So yeah. You're looking out the window wistfully as well.
I can just What's it like up north? Coming down. It's exactly how you'd expect it to be.
Yeah, standard British summer.
It's pretty grim at the moment. We've had all the weather this week. We've had roasting hot sunshine, thunder and lightning, hailstones. We've got a lot of heavy rain and drizzle again today. I'm assuming we've got snow tomorrow, and then possibly maybe some kind of, I don't know, some smog is probably going to happen at some time.
Someone forgot to tell the weather not to be a dick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, take our advice, weather. Cool. Brilliant. Well, have a cracking week, mate. Always good to have a catch up. It's been a good one this week. Good conversation. And I'll speak to you next week.
Yeah, and you, buddy. Lovely catching up.
Yeah, you too, mate.
Thanks for joining us on this week's podcast. That was another great conversation. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learnt a lot. We certainly learnt a lot over the years of gigging, and we're glad to share it in this one. Just a reminder, this is going to be the last podcast for a couple of weeks while we take a little bit of a summer break, just to catch up and have a rest, spend some time with our families. But we will be back in a few weeks' time, so keep your ears out for the next podcast coming up soon.